Rapoport sparked a world of debate earlier today when he announced that the Bengals are reportedly shopping John Ross. The 24-year-old was drafted 7th overall 2 years ago after blowing up the internet with a 4.22 second 40-yard dash time. But since then, injuries have told the story. Last year, Ross battled those same durability concerns but scored 7 touchdowns on 21 receptions. The question is, should the Eagles, a team in dire need of a speedster, be willing to take a look? My name is Liam Jenkins and this is an episode of Eagles Film Room. Before we get started though guys, I did just want to say a huge thank you for all of your support recently, and if you're not subscribed yet, please take that extra second to hit that red button. It means the world to us and we want to build the biggest community of Philadelphia sports fans possible. It's our 5th year anniversary tomorrow, and although YouTube's only played a small part in that window so far, we want it to be a major player moving forward, and we can't do that without your help. And don't forget, if you want to support us, there's merch available at the link in the description below. Before we get into the film though, let's talk misconceptions, because it's very easy to look at the season John Ross had, where he had 7 touchdowns on 21 receptions, and think it was some breakout. The truth is it really wasn't. He was targeted 55 times, and out of those times he only caught 21, obviously that's less than 50%, but there were also 7 drops included in that, and there were 5 interceptions when targeted. So this to me was an immediate red flag. Was it just really bad quarterback play, or were there errors that John Ross was making that was maybe forcing a couple of those mistakes? Also, of the 7 touchdowns he had, 5 of them came in the red zone. And when you're talking about a receiver whose main attribute is deep speed, that's not the sort of thing you want to hear. So is it the vanilla Cincinnati offense, or is there more to this story than meets the eye? We're going to start off by looking at what made John Ross such a dominant weapon in the red zone last year. And frankly, it all comes down to one attribute: that vicious first step that catches so many defensive backs off guard. We'll see a great example of it here against the New Orleans Saints. Now on the surface, he gets a lot of separation, it's an easy catch towards the back of the end zone, but if we slow it down and just watch that first step and how much momentum he builds, he's literally pointing towards that back corner. The DB, all he can do is reach in, and Ross brushes through contact almost like a defensive end would, and from there it's just plain sailing. It's an easy throw, an easy catch, and 6 points for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now this is one of Ross's more impressive red zone efforts, purely for the reason that I don't think this play was ever supposed to happen. Now Ross is going to run a simple slant route, but the play breaks down inside the pocket, Jeff Driscoll forced to roll out, and somehow, some way, Ross is aware of this. Now watch the route, he gets that great first step again, pushes all of his weight from his outside leg to burst inside and past the corner, but at this point the two clash heads, and Ross is looking into the backfield, he's seeing what's going on, he sees his quarterback rolling to the other side of the field, and immediately comes off of his DB, adjusts and adapts, and that's a huge trait for any wide receiver to have. At some point, speed had to come into the equation though, and the truth of the matter is that if you're going to run a slant or a play underneath, Ross is probably going to be among the most effective at his position, because there are going to be very few zone linebackers who are going to be able to contain him. They all drop back, they want to guard the very edge of their end zone, and just watch the throwing window that Jeff Driscoll has on this play. I mean, how are you going to miss that throw? You're not, unless there is something very wrong. An easy completion, Ross hauls it in, big time touchdown. Talking of speed, let's get into the nitty gritty. This is probably the reason why you clicked this video. The Eagles need a speed receiver, but is that need for speed going to be answered with John Ross? Let's see. He has a great deep route here, just going vertically down the field. Now he does injure his groin on this play, and I think it was at the point where he was going down to make the reception, but that's a quick example of the speed. What about over the middle when he's asked to cut inside, maybe run a breaking route? You can see he still tries to sell vertically. He pushes up against the safety there to see if he can get him to open his hips, and that doesn't quite happen, but the reception is hauled in nonetheless. This is going to be a more impressive outlook of what that speed looks like though. It's all very well showing go routes where there's plenty of separation. What about where you've got to drive for that to happen? And this was a perfect example earlier in that game against the Saints, against Eli Apple. Just watch that first step, we mentioned it earlier. Throws his body weight inside, there's very little contact, Ross can push through, and at this point he's got all the momentum because Apple had his feet stuck in the mud. And look at how much speed he's getting down the field. The ball's dropped in the bucket, there's not much Apple can do in that situation, and even here it's that first step again. We're not talking about raw speed as in, oh, he can take the top off a defense. This is coming off the line of scrimmage. Someone that can beat coverage, can beat press, can get a man to push a step back maybe. We see a great example of that here. A quick shimmy, he's driving through contact, adjusting to create a nice cushion for the catch. It doesn't get much better for a slot receiver. The issue though is that the Bengals offense is fairly vanilla, and Ross wasn't really challenged that heavily. He wasn't asked to go downfield all that often. And even here where we see Denzel Ward lining up against him, all it takes is a strong, sizable DB to really take him out of the equation, and this for me is a difficulty that Ross is going to face no matter what. He's 5'11". Those taller DBs like Denzel Ward, who like to play physically, are going to kind of feast or famine in that situation. But this was something I highlighted on Twitter earlier today. Jimmy Smith, an 8-year vet, he's 6'2". Ross is going to try all the tricks of the trade here to out-shimmy Jimmy Smith to see if he can get him off his stance. Smith stays compact, he stays with Ross, he's not biting on the double move, and at this point when the ball's thrown, where is John Ross? He's invisible. The DB has him absolutely blanketed, and that's something he's got to be aware of. In press situations, if he doesn't get open on that first step, you're going to see those stronger, more sizable, more physical cornerbacks have their way with him, and I think that happens too often. It's size versus speed, and this is from that same game against the New Orleans Saints that we keep highlighting. Just look at how this plays out. At the breakfast part of the route, all you're going to see here is John Ross get separation. The DB isn't playing physically, he's playing off coverage. It's a trail technique. He doesn't want to get in the face of Ross. Let him have the inside. It's a breaking route. There's safety help over the top, and at this point, he's not catching that ball. He is not getting anywhere near that ball. You've got two much taller defensive backs who are going to seek it out and destroy. Here's another angle of it. Where's John Ross? Nowhere near making that reception. It's a tough reality, but one that any NFL team taking on is going to have to face. However, this doesn't mean that Ross is totally incapable of running anything where he's not completely wide open due to his speed. Look at this play that came in that same matchup against the Baltimore Ravens. He does a fantastic job of adjusting to the ball, just like he did against the Browns. He realises that the ball is not going to the back of the end zone, it's not in that back right hand corner, and in this situation, that's probably for the best. Ross gets an okay launch off the line. It's not his most thunderous, nor does it create a huge amount of separation. But what it does do, however, is create enough of a room, enough of a window for him to drive down to the hash. And at this point, when the ball's in the air, he's locating it, he turns around and looks for it straight away, while the DB is still playing the receiver. Now that's very much the lure of having a speedy receiver, someone like a Deshaun Jackson, for instance, because you're going to have to constantly keep your eyes on what he's doing. But even here, in that matchup against the Ravens, where he's going to run a simple comeback route, all it takes once more is a sticky DB all over him, and that speed's almost eradicated. Look at the contact during the stem of that route, and Ross just doesn't have the play strength to shake that kind of contact off just yet. He kind of, for me, tries to get vertical a bit too much. He does too much with the intricacy of the route running. Like I said earlier, where he's pushing up against that safety. Watch this off the line. Hand placement right away. Very aggressive man press coverage from the Baltimore Ravens, and even on that comeback, he is being absolutely blanketed and attacked at the cash point, and there is nothing that John Ross is going to be able to do. Now, against the Cleveland Browns here, he does kind of give us a counter argument to that. He's going to run a nice route over the middle, another slant, again, vanilla offense, unfortunately, from the Bengals, but he hauls his pass in, absorbs contact, and then pushes right up to the 1 yard line. That's a much better effort than what we saw before, showing that he can drive through that contact. He also did it on a play earlier in this video, but is that going to be enough? I don't think we've seen enough out of John Ross just yet. This offense have done him no favours. The quarterback play was absolutely abysmal at the best of times, and if we're brutally honest, the injury history isn't exactly going to do him a world of good either. If we look back at his footballing career and the amount of knocks and setbacks that he's had, it's actually kind of worrying. He's had 3 meniscus tears, an ACL tear, 2 labrum tears, and numerous groin injuries, including one which really nagged during this sophomore season in the NFL. Now, you've got to ask yourself, why are the Bengals looking to trade John Ross? They've got AJ Green and Tyler Boyd signed through 2019. That is it. Their receiver corps is depleted. They need help just as much as anyone else. Why would they trade away a former first round pick from just 2 years ago? He's 24 years old and has that blazing speed. The answer to me is that I don't think the consistency is there. Ross hasn't panned out in the way we've hoped. He doesn't look like that deep threat because he hasn't been used as that deep threat. Now, should the Eagles kick the tires on a trade, depending on what the asking price is, I'm not sure. They're going to want a mid-round pick. The Eagles should absolutely not do that, given how important this offseason, how important this draft really is. They've tried so many players to fill that wide receiver 2 spot. Dorial Green-Beckham, Torrey Smith, Mac Hollins, Mike Wallace, just to name a few. None of them have been able to make it stick. I don't think John Ross is the answer here. Now, if we're talking a 7th round pick, you can arguably say that, you know what, let's kick the tires for an off-season, give him training camp and see what he can do, but you cannot go into a season leaning on John Ross. I think he's much better suited to a slot receiver, and in that kind of debate, against the $9 million cap hit that Nelson Aguilar would bring, it's a very different discussion I'll be willing to have, but as of right now, for a WR2, it would take a lot to perk my ears. There would have to be more involved in that deal. This just is not going to be a positive outlook for any team bringing Ross in, because there are so many question marks over his play. But what do you think, guys? Let me know what you feel about bringing John Ross to the Eagles or your respected NFL team in the comments. If you agree, disagree, let me know how you feel. Thank you so much for your support. From myself, Liam Jenkins, we'll see you for another video soon. Please do not forget to hit that subscribe button, and thank you for 5 years of being the best fans on the planet.